What up, what up? Welcome to Recovery Rockstars Uncut. I'm your host, Kevin Z, and I have an awesome episode for you guys today. I had the pleasure of speaking with Hilary Phelps, who is now over 15 years sober. However, for 15 years, she kept her alcoholism and sobriety a secret because she was concerned about what other people would think. And now she's speaking out, she's sharing her story, and she's letting those who are struggling know that they are not alone. Hilary is such a rock star, and I had a blast speaking with her. Hope you guys enjoy this episode, and now let's get into the show.
Welcome to Recovery Rockstars Uncut, uniting the recovery community with raw and real stories. Your host, Kevin Z, puts the light on people and brands that are rocking the recovery lifestyle. So you want to be a rock superstar? RecoveryRockstars.com. Now, here's Kevin.
Recording's in progress. Hilary, what is up? Welcome to the Uncut Podcast. How are you?
Hi, thank you. I'm doing great. How are you? Happy New Year.
Yeah. Oh, Happy New Year to you as well. Is the year 2023 off to a good start?
Oh, it is. And I've heard this from so many people. I say 2022 was a really, really rough one for me. And I'm like, and it came in threes. You know, they say that things come in threes. So I'm convinced that 2023 is going to be the best one yet.
Do we want to talk about the threes in 2022 that happened?
Yeah, I mean, so 2022, a lot good, I got divorced in 2022. I moved in 2022, but I also for the first time announced that I was sober. It was the first time I shared my sober journey. And then towards the end of 2022, I unexpectedly lost my dad. So it was a lot in 2022, but the beauty of it was, and I share this when I lead meetings now, it's like all of those things happened. It was the closest, even after 15 years that I've come to a drink and I didn't. So it's like, it was the closest.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear about the loss and the divorce. And, you and I were just talking before we hit the play button, but one of the great things to come out of this is you said 6 months ago, you really started sharing your recovery journey.
I did. And because what I realized, it was one of these, these moments of, there weren't a lot of women talking, and even like I heard the stats, it's 2.5 men to every 1 woman seeks treatment or help for sobriety for addiction related issues. And, I think it's the opposite for men in mental health, but if we're sticking to like less men seek treatment in mental health, more women do, but it's flip side with, addiction and sobriety. And so what I realized was like, there weren't a lot of people, women specifically, talking about it. And when I got sober, I felt really shameful. It felt really embarrassing. And I hid it from a lot of people because it was still believed that it was a disease of will. If I really wanted to quit, I could, or why couldn't I stop at 1? And, what I learned after 15 years, it's like, it's physically impossible for me. I just don't metabolize alcohol like everybody else. But I wanted to show people that it's not embarrassing. It can be a really beautiful process just to be vulnerable and open. And what I found in those 15 years is a deeper, connection with friends and family and loved ones, just through that, just pure authenticity and vulnerability that I never experienced while I was drinking. And so, it was one of those moments, like, because I shared on Instagram for the first time, and one of those moments like, well, here it goes. Like, because I shared on a podcast, a friend of mine has a podcast, and he asked me, and it was the right time. And I told him, had you asked me 3 months earlier, I would have said no, but I was coming up on 15 years. And I felt that's a good amount of time to have under my belt of sober living and tools, and that I felt confident I could handle any, negative things coming my way. Yeah.
So when you made that post, and I saw the post, it's pinned, and you hit send or post or whatever, I'm sure it was just a roller coaster of emotions. I'm sure you got instant feedback, but what were you expecting when you closed the phone for the night and the next morning?
So I was expecting, when I shared, I shared in May. So I shared a little bit before I had 15 years, and I was expecting crickets, I guess, people to kind of, like if you see a post and you're like, I don't know if I should like that or just leave it alone. Like, I'm not sure what to do with this. And you kind of scroll past it. Like, that's kind of what I was expecting, for people just not know what to say, kind of like, oh, that's uncomfortable. But it was the opposite, and people responded. I had no idea this is so brave. Thank you for sharing. My mom is struggling, then I'd get DMs and emails saying my mom is struggling. Like, oh my gosh, my best friend is struggling and can't get sober. Thank you for bringing light to this. I lost my mom to addiction. I noticed I drank a lot more during the pandemic and now I can't stop. What do I do? Can you recommend a book or a podcast or a resource or something? And it was the complete opposite. And I was like, this is needed. And it told me that it's really necessary and needed. And it wasn't something, I did it to kind of just get it off my chest and feel more free, kind of like releasing that shadow. And if I could help one person, then great. Or if people felt less alone. But the feedback that I got was that it was so much more needed than what I had anticipated.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure you were smiling and feeling empowered and ready to conquer the world the next day after you saw all the feedback. It is. Again, we were just talking about it. It's like when I started this platform, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if anybody would be willing to connect with me and share their story. And then, you got 1 interview, 2 interviews, 3 interviews. It just kind of snowballed. And it's just, everybody is struggling and needs help. So thank you so much for, even though it was 15 years in the making, getting out there and be willing to come on and do this. It's fantastic. What was your drug or drink of choice growing up? You started drinking at the age of 14, was it?
So drinking at 14. And when I started drinking, it was beer because that's what we could get. Or we would, so it was beer, or we would play Hey Mister, which is, I grew up in a college town in Towson, Maryland. So there's Towson, it was Towson State, now it's Towson University. And there was a liquor store that all the college guys went to. And so a friend of mine who's now also sober, we would stand outside and we'd be like, Hey, mister, can you buy us some Boone's Farm? We'd give him like $20 and which Boone's Farm's like $4, I don't know, $4 or something like that. So they could basically buy their beer in our Boone's Farms. We'd split a bottle because we're little high school girls. And so that was if I could choose, it was that, but I would also drink Irish rose red wine or something. It was horrible. It was so bad. And then after college, it was wine or champagne because I thought that or martinis, which I didn't like the taste of, but I thought that made me a little bit more elevated because I wasn't an alcoholic if I was drinking fancy drinks. If I was drinking scotch or whiskey out of a bottle, a paper bag in my car, that was like my line, like that was an alcoholic, but anything else was
a little bit better than Boone's. Yeah.
Yeah. But I would drink anything. I mean, because I did that whole game too of like, okay, well, wine's clearly the problem. I'm only going to drink hard liquor. Well, hard liquor's okay. That's a problem too. I'm only going to drink beer. Well, I'm blacking out on beer too. And I'd play this kind of like whack-a-mole game of which one worked better or not as, none of them did. And I experimented with drugs. I never sought them, but if it was there, I would never say no.
Go. Yeah. So when did you know you had a problem?
I would say college. I think the first time, I assumed that people in college were drinking like me because I feel like college is this breeding ground for addicts.
Yes,
you can hide it really well. You can experiment with it. You can get away with it. There's still the bumper guards of school. I was a swimmer, so I was an athlete. So I still had some parameters that I had to stay within. But my senior year of college, my 3 best friends were like, you've got a problem. You're not you. What is your deal? Because I was a blackout drinker. And so I would find myself in situations that weren't in line with my personality. You were kissing a boy in the corner while your boyfriend's at the bar getting you a drink. It's just not, they just weren't situations that I were happy about. And they knew it. And so they, and they would, they just said, we're worried about you. We're not, this isn't you. You have a problem. And I was like, are you going to stop being my friend? What's your deal? And I was so flippant and just arrogant about it. And they were, they were still my friends. And I was like, okay, we kind of mended it. But then when I realized it just continued after college and it stopped being cute. I say oh, it's cute in college because you can get away with it in that you can trade funny stories or I can be oh my gosh, get this, or this was, this is really funny, or, well, this is okay. Did you see her last night? It's kind of that space where anything is acceptable or more acceptable. But when I got into the work life and I was showing up hungover and I was still waking up with bruises on my legs, not remembering how they got there. Like it stopped being cute.
Yeah.
Or it's acceptable, but it just stopped being as acceptable. And what happened was my family had always said, like, you've got a problem. We're worried about your drinking. But I think, and I say, like, I never blame my parents or fault them, but like they came from a generation where you don't talk about things. They just kind of say, and so like the way I was taught to deal with things was to just like, look, if you look good on the outside, then that's what matters. Put a smile on, put sunglasses on if you're crying. Like, and so I have to say, like, my parents really stepped in this process of having to learn to walk through it as, you know, I'm sharing with them, like, this is what's happening. But at the time, you know, it was just kind of like, we're worried about you. And then I was in a relationship and he was like, I'm going to tell your family how bad you are if you don't get help. So like, I didn't have those. I didn't end up in jail. I got pulled over, but got out of a DUI. You know, we call them the not yets in 12-step rooms. But if I had continued, all those things are waiting for me. You know, all the things of being homeless and losing a job and ending up on the streets and plowing through every cent in my bank account, like all those things are possible for me and they're just waiting. But that was when I found, I kind of realized I was like, okay, fine, I'll try this thing called outpatient rehab. We'll see. If it doesn't work, then, you know, we'll see. But I did it for somebody else initially because I just didn't, you know, I didn't want to look at myself.
What do you mean you did it for someone else?
Well, I guess I did it, meaning this person, and I credit this guy. I was in a relationship, and he said to me, so I did it to kind of appease him, to be like, okay, I don't want to fight, I don't want to deal with this. I'll just do it, and like I'll check the box. And because I had tried 12-step meetings before, and I just wasn't ready. And so for me, that avenue wasn't as available as something like I just wanted and needed more accountability. And so I checked in, you know, thinking, didn't know that it would stick. I was just like, I'm just going to go make everybody happy. Like, we'll see if this works. Like, I just didn't know. But for me,
so you weren't ready to surrender. Like you said, you were just checking the boxes. You were going to go through the motions, knowing that you probably weren't going to get sober and come out of it and have more drinks. But guess what? I told you I was going to do it for you, and I'm doing it for you.
I'll commit to 8 weeks. Like, got it. We'll see. I was kind of like, we'll see what happens.
So tell me what.
I didn't tell him that. I was just like,
in your mind, totally got it. Yeah. So tell me about the 8 weeks and what actually happened.
Everything changed. I went in and because I'd stuffed things down for so long, I went in. There was one day I walked in and it's like you check in, it's check-in time, and then they split men and women. You have single, like that time, and therapy, and then you have this it's called feelings management at the end. And so it was a 3-hour every day after work, and we went into check-in. And I remember like the first couple of days, it's like, and they gave us Antabuse, which is a drug that that doesn't allow you to get drunk. You'll get sick instead of allowing the alcohol. I don't know the whole science, but it doesn't allow you to get drunk. You get sick instead. So cleaned everything out of my house. I was like, okay. And I went in, and all of a sudden, I was crying. I was sitting in this room and I'm bawling and I'm crying, and I have like, you know, ugly cry. And they said, and it was my turn, and they were like, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. I'm good. I'm good. Like tried to, you know, pull it together, like wiping. And they're like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm confused. I'm lonely. I'm all of this stuff. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what my life is going to look like. Like, I don't even know what's happening right now. This is so scary. I'm terrified. Like, and they're just like, we're clapping.
Yeah.
Like,
you needed somebody to talk to. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
But as like an achievement driven person, you know, and someone who needs affirmation and like a little bit, I was like, wait, what? That's a good thing. This is a good thing. And they're like, this is how you heal, because you're only as sick as your secrets. And the more you can share and just let that out, the more you'll heal, and the better you'll feel. And I was like, huh? And that was the first time, I was 29, that I'd heard being vulnerable is what helps us heal. Totally. Because I thought I had to be the strong, independent, like, you know, keep it together. And that really helped me. And I needed the little bit of accountability, because they'd ask us on Mondays when we came into the group, like, what meetings did you go to this weekend? And as a rule thought, like, I was like, okay, I went to this meeting and this meeting because I didn't want to be the one. Like, so I just needed that little bit more. And it was great. And then they gave you numbers of women that came through the program before, so you could connect with them to go to meetings. And I just needed a little bit extra. And that's what that, the 8 weeks provided for me. And that first year I did everything people told me to do. Went to meetings, called my sponsor, found new friends in the rooms, like did all this stuff. And then my first year, it's like 3 days out of my first year. And I was like, oh no, oh my gosh, I've done this for a year. Now what? Because it's like, now I feel like an adult. Now, how do I live? I have to live like this for the rest of my, wait a second. Because it's like, I didn't know I was going to make it 8 weeks. Now, all of a sudden I'm at a year with no drinking. It's the longest I've gone in 14, how old? Drank for 15, I've been drinking for 15 years. All of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, this is a real change in life.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah. That's pretty crazy. So you went in not thinking you were going to get sober. And I love how, you're in a meeting. It's like, I remember, I was going to therapy, and every time I go, it's like, I have nothing to talk about. Like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about today. And then you just sit down. They're like, so how are you? And I just start talking. And then an hour later, I realize, oh my God, I have so much shit going on that I just had to get out that you just don't realize. So you went in there, didn't think you were going to get sober. 8 weeks. I'm sure you found out a lot about yourself, why you were drinking, the root cause of it. And like you said, a year later, you're like, holy shit, I did not think this was going to happen. I'm a fucking adult. Oh my God, what am I going to do with my life now? And then fast forward to 15 years later, and you're sharing your story. And now I feel like you found purpose through your storytelling.
100%. And the funny thing is, like, when I was in that program, I went to the Barnes and Noble, like a bookstore, and I was like, I'm going to get to the bottom of why I'm an addict, and I'm going to buy every single book. They didn't have a lot of the Quit Lit. They didn't have a lot of resources in reading other than Drinking is a Love Story, which I loved. It was written by a woman, Carolyn Knapp. It was like the only book, it was her story. And it was like, I feel seen. They're like 4 books. And I read them and I was like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this, like investigative. I'm going to figure out why. And what I realized was, it doesn't, like, I just had to let go and surrender to the fact, like, this is, and like, let faith replace fear, right? Because it's like faith and fear are both unseen, and we can choose where to put our energy. And I was putting so much energy into the fear of worrying what it's going to look like. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do when I get married? What if I go to France and I can't drink wine? Like, what do I do on New Year's? All that fear, instead of putting the energy into that faith of, what if it's better than I thought? Which is what I found. And after 15 years, it literally, I mean, and this is what I shared about last year being one of the most challenging years of my life. And well, one of the most challenging years of my sobriety, I should be clear. And I joked with my mom because I smoked cigarettes when I was drinking, and I quit. And when my dad died, I smoked for 10 days. So I started smoking cigarettes again. And my mom goes, can't you just have a cup of coffee? Don't you just, is that okay? And I was like, coffee till I wake up in the morning, 1. 2, oh, Mom, what I want to do is go down to a bar and find a stranger, get really drunk with him, probably go home with him, pass out for a week.
Just give me this. I
not
just need
deal with it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So can I just, she goes, okay, you can have, you do that. She was like, my mom, she's
That's
like,
a better alternative. Yes.
Okay. Just go outside and have that cigarette, because it was like, what I want to do is escape. And this is the closest thing I can do today to feel like I'm escaping. And even after 15 years, like, the closest that I wanted to get to a drink, it's like, grateful that I had all of the tools. And I went and I led a meeting 2 days after we buried my dad, and to give back, because it's like, to keep this, I have to give it away. This isn't something where it's like hoarding it. Like, the more people that get help, the more people get help, and it's like one of those beautiful programs of like just unconditional love and vulnerability and sharing and just showing up for other people, Yeah.
So for somebody who is listening, who is struggling, what is your biggest piece of advice?
Oh my gosh, know that you're not alone. It's not shameful. everything you're feeling has been felt by somebody else, and somebody else has walked in the same shoes as you have. And again, I think the biggest advice is just replacing that fear with faith. That's terrifying. But when you look at it through the lens of like, they both are the unknown, like we have no idea what fear can manifest as, and we have no idea what faith can manifest as, and so it's like just switching, say like, I trust that there's something greater than myself, and it doesn't have to be God because it's not a program of religion. Right. It's just trusting that there are better things.
Hilary, I love that you say that, because I let fear hold me back in so many areas of my life. And for 2023, I established my word for the year. And that word for me is fearless. So I want to be fearless with my actions. And I love that you're actually said replace faith with fear, because I'm going to write that down. I'm going to put it on my mirror. I have, I wrote out fearless all over, and I have it like in little stickies all over my house, because I want to live a life without fear, especially in 2023, because I'm trying to make some life changes. Do you have a word for 2023? Or now that we're talking about it, I don't want to catch you off guard.
Yeah, no, I do. It's intention. And it's kind of two-part. One is that doing everything with intention, I've talked to Donnie about this too, like just moving, whether it's just moving in yoga with intention, like and not mindlessness, being mindful. So it's kind of two-pronged, like mindfulness and then attention. And then also, what is my intention behind this? Is my intention pure? Is it genuine? Is it kind? Versus, is my intention to manipulate? Is my intention to, because we can all do like, oh, if I do this, then they'll do this. And it's like, I don't want to come from that space anymore. And so it all comes from being, what is my intention? And mindful, I guess. So I think they kind of prop it up. But
I love that. I love the intention behind the intention. So
what
are your goals? All right. So I know you're a big recovery advocate. If somebody wants to connect with you, or what is your goals over the next 12 months for 2023?
So I've got big goals. So I at 44, I joked, it's like, not joked, but, and this is a beautiful thing about life, and just having faith, because in the sandbox when I was a child, nobody ever says, I think I want to be an alcoholic and really struggle. And nobody, right? So it's like, and I never intended that, nor did I ever intend to be divorced or lose my dad so young. Like none of these things I wanted, planned for, hoped for. But the beauty in the sobriety is that I try to look at these lessons as like, what is it doing? Like, what lesson is this providing versus like, why did this happen? Like, why me? So it's also shifting out of that like victim mentality. Anyway, I'm going down the rabbit hole. Okay. What is my plan for the next 12 months? So my plan for the next 12. And so my point in saying all that is that I'm even like shifting career. I just signed up to do holistic coaching so I can provide healing for women, healing in whatever it is, spiritual, physical, emotional, and mental, healing, whether it's sobriety, whether it's trauma, whether it's divorce, whatever that looks like. I started speaking. So this year I have some speaking engagements that are coming up and hoping to continue that. And then I've talked to a girlfriend about launching some retreats in 2024. So it's like everything is shifting so now I'm a publicist, I'm an entrepreneur, my own business, and I'll still kind of stay in that space, but really working to help people that need it. Like I work with an addiction center in Maryland. So I started working with Ashley Addiction, to kind of like, what does holistic wellness and recovery look like helping in that space, because it's not about, people can say that they're sober, but it's not about not drinking. It's really about recovery. It's about changing the people's places and things. It's about finding new rituals to replace the old ones. So like instead of drinking wine at night, drink tea. And as small as that sounds, those things are really hard when you've been doing it for so long. Yeah. And so being able to be a supportive voice is really important.
I love that. So Hilary, if people want to connect with you, whether for holistic wellness or speaking engagements or being on more podcasts, because you guys have to have Hilary on your podcast. Let's get this message out there. How can people connect with you?
So I have a website. It's hilaryphelps.com. It's 1L. So it's HILARYPHELPS.com, and has all the info there. It's probably a great place. Email, social, or social media. Instagram's great. Hilary Phelps _ anything. I was like, what is it?
Yeah, hold on. You guys follow Hilary. Hilary, again, I know it took 15 years of being in recovery to share your story, but your story is going to save lives. And the more we talk about it, the more vulnerable, that's a hard word to say, we are. I mean, the more we're just going to help each other out because we all need it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think because through vulnerability comes connection, and through connection comes healing, and if we all realize that we're not alone and we're all in this together, then we can help each other out rather than try to step on top of each other,
Perfect. That was a mic drop on that one. Hilary, thank you for being on the Uncut podcast. You are an absolute rock star.
Thank you.
Thanks for being in recovery, rock stars. I guess today's episode is done. In all seriousness, though, Kevin appreciates you being part of this community. RecoveryRockstars.com. Want to email us? Kevin@RecoveryRockstars.com. Facebook, Recovery Rockstars. Instagram us @RecoveryRockstars. Kevin's wardrobe brought to you by Kevin. Kevin's transportation brought to you by Kevin. Kevin's cable bill paid by Kevin so he can keep this podcast going. Goodbye.